Deep Dive, where we tear through a stack of sources to give you the ultimate shortcut to being well-informed. Today, you are front and center, because we are dedicating this entire deep dive to the absolutely bustling news cycle surrounding the Atari 8-bit computers. That's the iconic 400, 800, XL, and XE lines, and we're looking specifically at November 2025. And this isn't just a platform surviving on fumes of nostalgia. I mean, it is an active, vibrant, and incredibly ambitious field of modern development.
That's absolutely right. When you look at the source material for November, the narrative isn't simple. What truly stands out is this striking duality that really defines the current Atari 8-bit scene.
A duality? How so?
Well, on one side, you have high-level corporate validation. It's coming directly from Atari itself, confirming the 8-bit's importance in their overall future strategy. And then on the other side, the community is just focused so intensely on infrastructural longevity.
How to keep these 40-year-old machines running forever.
Exactly. And at the same time, developing software that truly pushes the limits of that original hardware architecture to its breaking point.
It really sounds like November solidified the platform. I mean, these are machines that first launched in 1979 as this vital, enduring retro computing pillar. We're not just looking at minor bug fixes here. We're talking corporate releases that are hitting modern consoles, massive software milestones, critical hardware upgrades. I mean, they're rewriting the machine's architecture.
Precisely. The big picture we can pull from the November sources is that the 8-bit line has moved well beyond being some static object of historical affection. It's a platform for active, ambitious development. It suggests that the journey that began so long ago is, well, it's still nowhere near its final destination. We are seeing a second golden age, and it's driven entirely by its core user base.
Okay, so let's unpack this with the corporate side first, because that kind of recognition really matters. The sources point to Atari CEO Wade Rosen setting a very ambitious tone earlier this year at Gamescom 2025. What was the company's declared mission, and where does the 8-bit line fit into that?
Rosen was absolutely clear in his vision. He articulated that Atari's ambition is to become the, quote, best in the world at retro games.
But he didn't just mean Pong, right?
No, not at all. He defined retro very broadly. He emphasized supporting retro revival studios, Night Dive, Digital Eclipse, M2, many of whom are now operating under Atari's umbrella.
Yeah.
This consolidation sends a massive signal that the company is serious about treating its entire past IP catalog, including the complex computer libraries, as a current asset.
An asset that requires what? High-quality professional revival.
Exactly. It's not just a quick cash-in.
And he didn't just talk about money and strategy. I saw a quote where he actually acknowledged the people who kept the brand alive through decades of stagnation.
He did, and that's a rare and really important nod to the vintage computer community. He specifically said, and I'm paraphrasing a bit from the source here, that Atari would have ceased to exist decades ago if it weren't for that component.
And by that component, he means the loyal core audience.
The ones who stuck with the hardware, the emulation, the physical machines. He acknowledged it. He said, we know that, we don't ignore that, we're really grateful for that because it allows us to set up a base. That gratitude is meaningful because it sets the philosophical stage for why they'd invest in projects like the Atari Plus platform, which Rosen himself called Evergreen.
So it's not a flash-in-the-pan nostalgia cash grab.
No, it implies a real commitment to supporting that historical base far into the future.
Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting for the 8-bit faithful. The Namco Legendary Pack. This wasn't just another general retro compilation. This DLC for the hugely successful Atari 50, the anniversary celebration delivered a huge, specific 8-bit milestone.
This is maybe the ultimate corporate validation in November. The DLC, it launched on modern consoles, on PC, November 13th and 14th for what, $7.99?
Yeah, a pretty modest price.
Right. And it included something historically unique. The first ever console re-release of the native Atari 8-bit computer version of Pac-Man.
Wait a minute, we need to stop there. The first ever console re-release of the actual 8-bit computer version, not the notoriously poor 2600 version or the slightly better 5200 version. Why is that such a massive deal?
It's significant because the Atari 8-bit version of Pac-Man, while not arcade perfect, was a technical marvel for the 400 and 800 hardware when it launched.
Right, the 2600 version was rough.
Extremely. It was programmed with such severe memory and hardware constraints that it really limited the display and the gameplay. The 8-bit computer version, though, it leveraged the complex display list interrupts, the sophisticated Pokey sound chip, the larger memory bank. It created a much, much closer approximation of the arcade experience available on home hardware at that time.
So the sources are highlighting that by including the native 8-bit archive, Atari is validating the computer library.
Yes. They're saying it's a superior, or at least a distinctly important historical artifact worthy of contemporary presentation.
So it's not just a quick emulation job. It shows the corporate owners actually understand that the 8-bit computer version of a game is often a technical benchmark that stands apart from its console counterparts.
Absolutely. The pack also included other Atari-related Namco titles in the historical timeline, archival material, Galaga, Sevius, Galaxian, Dig Dug. But while some of those might be 5200 titles or contextualized via emulation, the inclusion of that specific native 8-bit Pac-Man, it suggests a willingness to dig deep into the archive.
And use the computer platform as a showcase for that early 80s programming ingenuity.
That's it. It's an explicit commitment to using and validating the 8-bit archives for a contemporary audience.
Okay, so moving from corporate recognition to the community's incredible creative output, we have to talk about one of the great white whales of 8-bit software, Elite. The news confirmed in November about this port is, well, it's a staggering technical achievement.
It is arguably the signature software milestone of the month. We had the confirmed release of David Braben's legendary space combat simulator Elite on the Atari 8-bits on November 24th. And for context, you have to remember, Elite was famously complex. It was a game that pioneered vector graphics, open-world trading, procedural generation. It was challenging to run even on 16-bit machines later on.
So what does it take to run Elite on a 1.79 megahertz 6502 machine? I mean, this isn't just about loading files. This is serious, deep optimization.
It's
Right?
extreme optimization. This port maximizes every single trick in the book. We are talking about utilizing dynamic memory swapping, heavily optimized display list interrupts DLIs to repaint the screen with minimal CPU overhead.
And the 3D calculations.
Highly efficient fixed-point math routines. Because the Atari 8-bit does not have a floating point unit, so you have to handle those complex 3D vector calculations in real time, basically by hand. Successfully porting this decades later, it really emphasizes a trajectory for sustained, maximalist, high-complexity software development in the modern homebrew scene.
It proves developers are dedicated to squeezing every last drop of performance from this aging architecture.
Every last cycle.
But I have to challenge this a little. If this game relies on every optimization trick, does that mean it's effectively an exclusive for highly upgraded machines? Is this really a victory for the standard 48K Atari 800 user, or is it only for the high-end modding elite?
That's a crucial question, and the sources suggest it's a victory for the platform as it currently exists in the enthusiast community. So while developers strive for maximum compatibility, games of this complexity, they necessarily target the extended memory capability.
Like 128K or more.
Exactly, which are now really common in the XL and XE systems. This sets a new bar. It kind of demands that users participate in the hardware upgrade cycle if they want to run the most ambitious new titles.
Speaking of ambitious new titles targeting those upgraded machines, November saw some other fresh homebrew releases beyond Elite.
Yes, we had Hooks by Alex Veroli, described as a basketball/break game with really polished graphics. And then there's Cosmic Hero 2 Prologue by Zilex.
And the Cosmic Hero 2 Prologue is the one specifically noted as targeting the later machines, correct?
Precisely. The source material explicitly notes it targets the Atari XLXE computers. This confirms the trend we were just talking about.
Games targeting extended memory.
Exactly. When we talk about XLXE, we're usually discussing machines with a minimum of 64 KB, but more often 128 KB, or even 256 KB of RAM, thanks to some pretty easy upgrades.
And why is that necessary?
Because ambitious modern titles require that headroom. For large maps, for complex sprite data, for optimized code that doesn't need to constantly swap data from slow disk drives, developers are tailoring games for the machines that the community uses now, which are, overwhelmingly upgraded XLXE machines.
That makes perfect sense. You build for the best available version of the platform. Now let's talk about tangible proof of the community's economic and logistical health, the physical media market. The fulfillment of the AWA anthology was successfully completed in November.
This anthology, a monumental effort by Arnie Anschwitz and Jay Weisgerber, is a major success story. It confirms the robustness of the physical distribution pipeline. It represents the successful shipping and final delivery of a long-term project involving 14 different games. These three developers originally wrote these titles in BASIC back in the 1980s.
Right, and the aha moment for them was that they revisited these 14 games and essentially professionalized them by giving them a, what was the quote, a fresh look at them in assembly.
Yes, converting them from that slow, interpreted BASIC code into highly efficient, fast, machine-optimized assembly language.
No.
This not only makes the games run better, but it also serves a preservation function by capturing the original creative intent in its most polished form.
And the release itself was pretty comprehensive.
It was. It was available on cartridge, floppy disk, and thumb drive, targeting the entire 8-bit computer line. This multi-format approach is essential for commercial viability. It captures both the modern enthusiast who loves instant cartridge loading and the purist who values the authenticity of physical disk media.
And I love that little detail about the packaging itself. The floppy disks side B even contained the original, unoptimized BASIC versions for pure nostalgia and historical reference.
It's a beautiful touch for preservationists, and for young developers looking to study the evolution of programming on the platform. Furthermore, the developer team showed this cross-platform ambition, noting their motivation to release on the Atari 5200 console as well.
And their reasoning for that.
That the console audience is starved for games, which indicates that the 8-bit development community sees its role as filling content gaps across the entire vintage Atari ecosystem.
So the successful fulfillment confirms the robust economic health, the organizational skill, and the ambition of the physical homebrew market.
Without a doubt.
Okay, so if the software confirms the creative ambition, the hardware and tooling updates confirm the intense focus on infrastructural longevity. Let's start with the state-of-the-art in emulation, which is so vital for testing and development. Altera. Version 4.22 saw a massive host of updates in November.
Altera is rightly considered the gold standard 8-bit emulator, and its continuous updates are, well, they're non-negotiable for ensuring modern operating systems can handle 8-bit software and specialized hardware interactions seamlessly. The latest updates show a tremendous focus on supporting esoteric physical media and the most advanced visage and modern peripherals.
So it's not just for nostalgic playback.
No, not at all. This proves the emulator's being maintained for cutting-edge development use.
Let's dive into the changelog then. They added cartridge support for JAtari Cart and DCart. Why is supporting specific modern homebrew cartridge formats so essential for an emulator update?
Because today's high-complexity software, like that Elite port we just discussed or some of the high-end demos, they often rely entirely on these modern cartridge formats. They aren't just ROM banks anymore. They often provide specialized hardware extra RAM banking or even built-in accelerators that the original 8-bit computer needs to run the software.
So if Altera doesn't support the latest standard,
the software essentially becomes unplayable for the vast majority of users who rely on emulation for ease of use or for development testing. The emulator has to move at the speed of the hardware development community.
they also added a staggering amount of cassette enhancements. Vorbis decoding, support for paired data and audio files, Turbo D support, and this highly specific FSK speed compensation.
This is a deep dive into functional preservation. It's moving beyond simple data readout. The Vorbis and OGG pairing allow for more compact, higher quality audio representations of tape data, which is crucial for perfect digital archiving.
But the FSK speed compensation, that sounds like the real landmark achievement there.
It is.
Yeah.
FSK, frequency shift keying, that's how tape drives encode digital data using audio tones. Physical tape reading is inherently unstable. Speed varies because of motor drift, tape drag, friction. It all leads to jitter and corrupted data.
So FSK speed compensation is basically software correcting for the physical imperfections of 40-year-old plastic and rubber.
Exactly that. It uses advanced algorithms to dynamically analyze the incoming audio signal and compensate for those timing inconsistencies, the jitter. It makes the tape data acquisition far more reliable than the original hardware often was.
That's incredible.
It's preservation science at its highest level. It ensures that even the most fragile, obscure tape formats, like the high-speed Turbo D format popular in Europe, can be reliably preserved and used.
Altera's CPU and debugger features are getting highly specialized too. We see the addition of a 23x multiplier option for 65C816 mode and new debugger tools. This seems to be moving way beyond the casual user.
It absolutely does. The 65C816 mode is the crucial context here. This refers directly to hardware expansions, like the Rapidus accelerator card, which replaces the standard 6502 CPU with the 16-bit 65C816 processor.
And that processor can run much faster.
Much, much faster. Up to 20 megahertz, giving the Atari a massive speed boost. So that 23x multiplier is a specific tool for developers testing speed optimizations on these advanced systems. It allows them to gauge how their new 16-bit code performs in these massive speed increases.
And the practical impact of running the Atari OS in a 16-bit mode with something like a Rapidus.
Well, the ability to execute 16-bit instructions allows for much faster disk I/O, more complex operating system routines, and the ability to handle massive memory spaces efficiently. This is foundational for high-end applications in complex games. And then the new debugger tool, the .vbx6d history, that supports debugging for the VBXE graphics card expansion.
Which is the card that lets the Atari output to modern monitors.
Right, at modern resolutions and high color depths. Without understanding the VBXE, debugging its display lists is meaningless, but for a high-end developer, it is mission critical. Altera is the go-to tool.
And finally, peripheral support expanded significantly. We've got the microbits modem, a parallel to serial adapter, and a whole bunch of vintage printers.
This ties right back to functional preservation. These are not just cosmetic additions. Emulating these printers and modems ensures that legacy applications, software word processors, database programs, terminal programs that relied on these exact peripherals remains fully functional in the modern era.
So you can use a 1980s word processor exactly as intended.
Right down to the virtual printer handshake. It preserves the entire computing environment. And we also saw those subtle, continuous updates to the A800 core on SteamDB in mid-November, which just tells us that quiet stability maintenance is always ongoing.
Now let's turn to physical hardware, because the community is physically modifying these machines to modernize them dramatically. The sources detail the absolutely phenomenal 1200 XL 1MB project.
This project, driven by Michael from Terabits, involved a major architectural shift on the motherboard, moving the memory from DRAM, dynamic RAM, to SRAM, static RAM. This resulted in a substantial 1088K upgrade. That's over a megabyte of RAM, which is just extraordinary for an 8-bit machine.
So why go through the immense complexity of replacing the entire memory architecture? We need to understand the engineering payoff beyond just having more RAM.
The complexity is immense. You have to design and integrate a custom memory controller that replaces the original, very complex DRAM timing circuitry. But the payoff is multifaceted. First, SRAM is far faster and consumes significantly less power than DRAM. That reduces heat and overall system strain. Second, and this was the key benefit Michael noted, was eliminating noise issues in the analog video output.
Video noise? How does the memory type affect video output?
DRAM requires constant refreshing. The intricate timing and switching logic for that refresh cycle generated significant electrical noise that often bled into the sensitive analog video circuitry, especially on machines like the 1200 XL. By switching to quieter, less demanding SRAM, he got rid of the last remnant of video noise-producing hardware on his machine.
Resulting in a cleaner, more stable picture?
Exactly, which is essential for use with modern, high-definition monitors that are really unforgiving of noisy analog signals. It's a relentless pursuit of signal perfection.
The same designer is behind the continued evolution of the portable system, the NUC+4. This is an incredible miniaturization effort.
It truly is. The NUC+4 portable system is designed to be the ultimate ready-to-go machine. It features that immense 1088K RAM, uses the A8 Pico cart for storage, offers a choice of S-Drive or Fujinet connectivity for modern networking, and includes a battery-backed real-time clock.
And the goal was pure portability.
The designer said the goal was to create an extremely portable system that could be tossed in a bag and taken to a meetup without sacrificing any functionality.
There's a deeply technical detail in here, though. The new Fujinet MIDI Play module. It integrates a MIDI synth chip and routes its output directly into the SIO audio input pin. Tell me why this is such clever engineering.
This is a masterclass in integration. The chip, the Dream Sam 2695, is a dedicated, high-quality MIDI synthesizer. Normally, getting high-quality audio into the Atari is difficult. By routing the chip's output via a simple resistor mixing circuit directly into the serial SIO audio input pin, they bypass the often noisy internal audio path. They use a dedicated input designed for external sound devices.
Which gives you much cleaner audio.
High-quality audio output, compatible with mid-emit connections. It allows for rich, synthesized music that far exceeds what the native Poki chip can do. It effectively turns the NUC+4 into a sophisticated, modern music workstation, all in a tiny, portable package.
And the choice of the A8 Pico cart integration is a philosophical one too, isn't it?
Absolutely strategic.
Oh.
They integrated the A8 Pico cart, which uses modern flash storage, for full-speed cartridge software. The stated goal was to remove the bulk associated with hauling around a bunch of real physical carts.
It aligns perfectly with their goal of extreme portability.
Maximizing power and speed while minimizing size and physical footprint. The hardware ambition here isn't just about making the machine better, it's about making it practically usable in a 21st century environment.
Okay, we've spent this entire segment talking about incredible hardware achievements and radical modernization efforts, but the sources reveal a glaring choke point, a critical vulnerability that runs completely counter to all this progress in the physical longevity of the 8-bit line, the Pokey chip.
This is perhaps the most important caveat in the entire November news cycle, because it threatens the long-term maintenance foundation of the whole platform. The POT keyboard integrated circuit is absolutely essential. It is not just the sound chip.
Right. It does a lot more.
It's responsible for the 4 channels of sound, reading the analog paddle controllers, managing keyboard I/O, controlling the serial I/O bus, and providing pseudo-random number generation. If Pokey fails, your Atari 8-bit is bricked. It can't even perform basic input functions.
And why is that a problem right now if the community is so good at building modern replacements for everything else?
Because original Pokey chips are extremely scarce. They're discontinued, and they suffer a high failure rate due to age and heat. This crisis led to the emergence of FPGA field programmable gate array replacements. The Pokemon version 2 was available in November, but it was primarily aimed at the higher volume Atari arcade board market for games like Centipede and Gauntlet.
And that's where the tension lies. Why doesn't an arcade replacement work perfectly in a home computer?
Because the Pokey performs different functions in the computer than it does in the arcade boards. In the computer, it's integral to the keyboard matrix and the SIO timing. FPGA implementation is difficult because Pokey contains both complex digital logic and sensitive analog components, like the audio output and the random number generation.
So getting those analog characteristics right is the hard part.
And especially the precise timing for keyboard scanning. That's incredibly complex to get right in an FPGA.
And the sources flagged a major caveat about using the Poke 1v2 in the computers themselves, turning a potential solution into a critical risk.
Yes, the critical functional warning was explicit. The Poke1 version 2 documentation stated that it, quote, has not been tested in Atari computers.
Wow.
The sources noted this non-verification creates a massive risk and vulnerability in the physical maintenance stream for the 8-bit computers. For example, specific functions integral to the computer, like reliable keyboard I/O, were specifically mentioned in community discussions as being potentially problematic.
So we have a community successfully pushing the 8-bit to its structural limits with high-end 1088K upgrades and high-level software like Elite. Yet the most basic input functions, sound and keyboard, rely on a core custom chip that is failing, and the most accessible modern replacement is untested and potentially non-functional for the computer line.
That is the ultimate tension of November 2025. This segmentation issue, where the arcade market gets a verified solution and the computer market is left relying on untested alternatives or dwindling new old stock chips. It's a massive threat. All the advanced hardware projects, the NUC+4, the 1MeB upgrade, they all rely on a working Pokey. If we cannot secure a tested, reliable replacement for this single chip, the physical maintenance viability of the entire 400-800XLXE line faces a hard limit, regardless of how great the software ambition is.
This vulnerability has to be addressed
Urgently, for the long-term health of the physical platform.
That critical Pokey vulnerability aside, the community's commitment to functional preservation and interactivity remains extremely strong. That brings us to the publication of the BBS Connectivity Guide in November, which is all about preserving the experience of 1980s computing.
On November 16th, Rob Sherman published the comprehensive guide, Connect Your Atari 8-Bit Computer to a Live Bulletin Board System, or BBS. This is a phenomenal undertaking, but it's much more than a tutorial on modem settings. It standardizes modern networking practices, primarily using technologies like FujiNet, and it confirms the community's priority.
Which is preserving the authentic, interactive computing experience, not just running isolated games.
That's it exactly.
Why is preserving BBS connectivity so critical? I mean, it sounds nostalgic, but what is the functional importance?
It allows users to truly replicate the 1980s online culture, accessing message bases, downloading files, playing door games, using either physical hardware or modern emulation. This guide makes that possible by bridging the gap between vintage modem software and modern internet protocols. It ensures long-term functional preservation of the software's original environment.
It's an affirmation that tools like FujiNet and the emulators aren't just for loading pirated files.
No, they are essential infrastructure for ongoing social and technical interaction.
And these networking tools are integrated into the regular community digests, too.
Right, the latest periodicals for November were live and focused heavily on integration. Atari Insight's November 2025 issue went live, featuring structured content that guides users in the modern scene. This included an Atari Holiday Buyer's Guide, the start of the Joystick Workshop series, which is essential for repair and maintenance, and a Thinking in Code with Basic Excel column, which keeps programming skills sharp.
And it had a deep dive into the A8 Pico cart.
Critically, yes. The same modern flash cart used in the portable NUC Plus 4. This synergy between the magazine content and the latest hardware is key to rapid community adoption.
And Atari Now. November 2025 provided its usual timely collation of monthly news. It sounds like the media stream is highly functional and informative.
Yes, these newsletters are critical infrastructure themselves. They act as curators in a decentralized scene. And the social structure remains anchored by physical events, confirming the health of the in-person community.
The source confirmed the annual physical gathering, the Atari Party, was held on November 22nd at the Quakertown train station.
These events are the lifeblood. They sustain the social life, allow for hardware troubleshooting, and facilitate the collaborative nature of the community. In a world of digital communication, having that annual confirmed physical handshake is absolutely vital.
For maintaining motivation and passing on physical maintenance knowledge.
Exactly.
Digital community engagement was high as well, especially on streaming platforms, and the game choice there was very telling.
Streams showcase the platform's history, including a broadcast of the classic platformer Miner 24-9er. But the key selection was MULE Online on November 17th. The focus on MULE, a landmark economic simulation renowned for its groundbreaking four-player multiplayer features, emphasizes the community's intense interest in preserving the multi-user interactive history of the platform.
Which aligns perfectly with the philosophical goal of the BBS guide.
It's all about interaction.
Tying this all back to functional preservation, the community loves to showcase how detailed these vintage programs were, even the simulators. One source provided a deep look at the casino simulator game, Video Vegas, published way back in 1986.
This game is a fascinating window into the past, demonstrating the sophistication of 8-bit programming for simulation purposes. The game included a variety of casino staples: slots, draw poker, keno, and blackjack.
And the level of detail embedded in the simulator, particularly around the odds, is pretty remarkable. For the slots, the odds are advertised as approximately 98%.
That's a key fact that speaks to the realism that developers were aiming for. A 98% payout rate is about as good as one would find in a real Las Vegas casino at the time, which often ran between 95 and 98%. And programming an 8-bit machine to reliably simulate those complex long-tail odds using only 8-bit integer math, the typical limitation of the 6502 that requires careful algorithm design.
It's not as simple as it looks.
Not at all. The slot payout only works if you get a single cherry on the left or right, or 3 of anything other than cherries, or 3 bars. It's a subtle, multi-tiered mechanism that accurately replicates real casino odds management using limited resources.
And the draw poker section wasn't an easy ride for the player either.
No. The analysis revealed a critical detail of the simulation logic. Only a pair of jacks or better are winners.
Which is standard for modern video poker.
Right, but implementing it on the Atari 8-bit ensures the game maintains a proper house edge, just like a real video poker machine. The programs weren't just making a game, they were making a functional simulation of a gambling machine's core mechanics.
The sources even documented the controls for preservation.
F1 on the Commodore 64 version or the escape key on the Atari 8-bit takes you back to the main menu. This reinforces that preservationist effort of documenting not just the game logic, but the entire, authentic user experience right down to the key presses. So, what does this all mean when we put the pieces of November 2025 together for you? The core duality we identified at the start is now crystal clear. Corporate validation of legacy content, headlined by that truly historic Pac-Man 8-bit console re-release, sits alongside unprecedented community ambition, demonstrated by the massive technical demands of the Elite port and the architectural complexity of the 1088K SRAM upgrades.
The Atari 8-bit ecosystem is operating with high efficiency. It relies on incredibly sophisticated emulation tools like Altera, which can correct for tape jitter and support 16-bit accelerators, alongside modern connectivity solutions like Fujinet and the new BBS guide. And this efficiency allows the scene to produce high-quality, large-scale physical releases like the AW Anthology. It is a platform living a robust, highly sophisticated second life.
The development community is operating at the absolute highest level of technical demand, constantly challenging the architecture. They have solved problems of memory, speed, graphics, and connectivity that were unthinkable 40 years ago.
Which brings us back to the most critical point, the underlying tension in the sources for you, the listener, to mull over. The community is successfully pushing the 8-bit architecture to its absolute limits with high-complexity software and radical advanced memory solutions, seemingly guaranteeing longevity. But what is the long-term feasibility of this trajectory if the platform is critically dependent on sourcing and testing reliable modern replacements for custom, essential, failure-prone chips like the Poki? This vulnerability, explicitly highlighted by that untested in Atari computers warning on the Pokemon V2, raises a crucial, inescapable question. How long can hardware ambition thrive when the physical maintenance stream for the most basic, fundamental components is at high and unmitigated risk? If the heart of the machine fails, all the advanced brain power in the world is useless. That's the challenge for December.